With us now, CNN senior military analyst Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and partner of the Carlyle Group. Admiral, great to see you. Obviously, Fred, down here in Iran right now, but the future of the conflict in that country may be being decided here in Switzerland, in Geneva, where these diplomatic meetings are taking place. We heard President Trump say he's going to give up to 2 weeks to decide whether the United States will get involved. In this, though, you see the possibility of maybe trying to lull Iran into complacency. What do you mean?
As an operator, someone who's been a combatant commander of the United States, the first thing I think is, could this possibly be a ruse of some kind to kind of, as you say, John, lull the Iranians into a false sense of security? I, for one, noted the president didn't say, I'll make a decision after 2 weeks. He said within 2 weeks. To me, that's keeping open the possibility. So point one, could this be a way to sort of soothe the Iranians and make them feel not as jumpy? Although what we just saw from Fred Pleitgen shows those gunners are quite concerned about incoming. Secondly, as an operator, John, I kind of think 2 weeks, it's an operational pause, if you will, but believe me, the Pentagon's not pausing. They're using it, as you heard a few moments ago, to put in place the defensive mechanisms, because if we do strike, we can be, I think, assured of Iranian response. And third, and most hopefully, it does open a window for diplomacy. Let's hope that something that comes out of Geneva, for example, could take advantage of these 2 weeks. So there's several different ways you can look at this operational pause.
And of course, as we just heard from Nick Robertson in Haifa, and we heard from Fred Pleitgen in Tehran, the conflict between Iran and Israel isn't letting up in these 2 weeks. If it is, in fact, 2 weeks, obviously, you know, we've seen all the activity over Tehran, the bombs, the missiles falling here. What can Israel do in this time without U.S. involvement if it wants to try to end this altogether?
If they go after their stated principal objective of taking out the nuclear program of Iran completely, as we've all talked about endlessly for a week, without that big bunker busting bomb, they really have far less of a chance of doing that. Could they put a battalion of commandos on the ground and take it out? Perhaps. Could they hit it with multiple repeated 4,000-pound bombs, which they have? They could, but they don't really have the option to cleanly take out that massive centrifuge hall. What they are doing, and I think it's a smart move if you're Israeli, what's really hurting them right now, John? It's those ballistic missiles. So the Israelis are taking out as many of the ballistic missiles on the ground as they can. And more importantly, I think taking out the production facilities, sort of shooting the Archer before the Archer can let fly with that ballistic missile.
Again, this is a picture, a still photo of Fordo, which is that nuclear enrichment facility you were talking about there. Believe that only U.S., the so-called bunker buster bombs, the only thing that can penetrate the 200, 300 feet into this area and under this mountain where the centrifuges might be. You did talk about what the Iranians are doing inside Israel right now, and there have been continued strikes, and we just saw Haifa, and we saw down in Beersheba, down in the south, where there have been strikes there. If the Iranians, do the Iranians in these next 2 weeks have the capacity to replenish their missile supply, or maybe get missiles externally, whether it be, I don't know, from Russia, from China?
The current answer is they still have production facilities. Some of those are underground. And yes, there's a slim possibility, although I think it quite unlikely, that Russia, or particularly Russia, might step in to provide at least some components to construct further ballistic missiles. But I think their inventory of those weapons are dwindling. One thing to remember as Americans, we read a headline, so far 25 Israelis have been tragically killed by these ballistic missiles. Kind of do the math, John. Proportionally, Israel is only 1/35 the size of the United States. So 25 killed is like 1,000 Americans killed so far. Pretty sobering for our Israeli friends.
And as these talks continue, Admiral, in Geneva, in your mind, what is it that Iran could offer? What could they put on the table? Not necessarily that the United States would accept, but that Israel would accept.
You're on to a very important point, which is this. We tend to think of this scenario as being a triangle, right? It's Israel, it's Iran, and it's the United States. There are many, many other actors who are watching this closely, who have big equities. I'd say we need to think of it less as a triangle and maybe more as a pentagon. And I don't mean that building where I spent way too much of my life. What I mean by a pentagon is, yes, US, Israel, Iran. Another point of that pentagon is the European Union. They have enormous economic equities. Iranian missiles can strike members of the EU. So EU has a big vote on this ultimately. And I think the fifth point, you alluded to it a moment ago, is Russia and China, both of whom regard Iran as a strong partner, economic partner in the case of China, military partner in the case of Russia. It's really a pentagon. If we're going to avoid a war, it's going to take more than just the US here. I think we'll see a bit of that start to emerge from these talks in Geneva.
Yeah, we have Matthew Chance standing by right outside the residence where these talks will take place. We're looking for any sign of activity there, obviously charting all the developments. Admiral James Stavridis, great to have you on this morning. Thank you very much.